everybody, welcome back to a brand new Sims 4 video, and as you can tell, although we are in a different position today, we're going to be doing more of the commentary video versus gameplay, or create a sim, or build. So as most of you probably know, I like to have a concept or a theme that I talk about in every single commentary video, whether it's a random Twitter comment that I've seen or it's something actually that's been going on in the Sims community. And although I'm very late to this, I really want to talk about the idea of bringing cars into The Sims 4, functional cars into The Sims 4. So where did inspiration come from for this video? Now, a few months ago now, I'm very late, I'm very aware. I think around December, January time, the Sims team basically released a survey filled with loads of potential concepts and basically kind of asked the Sims community to vote on which concepts they would like in the game. And one of these concepts, you will have guessed it, was cars. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the potential pack. Let's get into it. Before I delve too much into my own opinions about what I think about cars as a concept, let's get into actually what the Sims team are proposing for a potential pack idea. I do also want to say everything that I'm saying right now is hypothetical. The Sims team have not officially confirmed this. They've not officially announced anything. It's not on like a roadmap necessarily that we're 100% guaranteed getting it, but you can kind of get an idea that we might be getting it based off of the survey, but like all hypothetical. We nothing's been announced. Okay, let's get into the car life description that the Sims team gave us. So, enter the ultimate pack that weaves cars into the day-to-day stories of your Sims. Start by sparking kids' love for cars with playful collectible toys and a mini mechanics toolbox. Express imagination whilst racing RC cars and playing with epic toy car tracks. Join an after-school gearhead club or climb into the racing arcade simulator and go head-to-head against friends. Send your teens to driving school so they can get their license and gain independence with their first car, with every choice reflecting your Sims' personality and aspirations. Enjoy a movie at a drive-in theatre with friends and family, or share intimate moments at a scenic overlook into the stars with your sweetheart. Send your Sims off to work as a gig worker, car salesperson, or professional race driver, or take an active profession as a mechanic working at the local garage. Or I suppose it's meant to be garage, but anyway. As your Sims grow their income, elevate their status with celebrity limos and luxury cars, whether they're pretending to drive the couch or fix up a broken down jalopy. Is that? I don't know. Every Sim can find their dream ride. Get ready to fuel your Sims' passions with their dreams to drive and explore the world of cars in The Sims like never before. That's the description. Let's get into some of the strengths to begin with. Overall, I said the concept sounds cool, which it does. I like the addition of cars, obviously, overall. I also really like the fact that they've kind of gone in quite a few different directions with it. My only slight worry is that if it's like some other packs, is that there might be a lot of features, but they're not done very in depth. So my hope is that if they really do pursue this and like include as many features as they've listed here, that they're done to a good standard. But yeah, overall, I think it really sounds cool. I also made a note of saying that the incorporation of both children and teens are a really nice addition. I sometimes think with some packs, it's really like lackluster in terms of it being super intergenerational. It's kind of like more for young adults. So I quite like the idea of like children, teens, and young adults, elders being incorporated into this. I think that's really a nice addition, and like I said, not something that we have in loads of the other packs. I said that the range of careers, having both the basic careers but also the active profession, is a really nice addition. It's a really nice like layer that they added or could add into the game. Yeah, I really liked that. I also put about the nice addition, particularly of like celebrity limos. My only concern with this is how would this work if you didn't have Get Famous? Because would you just not have the celebrity limos, or like how would it work? Do you know what I mean? Like how would it work with the celebrity UI system? Would there be like its own like separate one if you're like a famous F1 or not F1 driver but racing driver? Who knows? And then I kind of just put it would be a really nice addition of adding some realism into the game. Learning to drive is a really normal thing. Like driving in general is a pretty day-to-day thing. So I do really like the addition of it. I also do quite like the combination of there being features for people that are maybe like less realistic, like being a racing driver. Like there's not as many people I know personally that are a racing driver professionally, so I do think that's quite cool. But then you also have the addition of like being able to maybe repair broken down vehicles and like upgrade cars and stuff, which I feel like is really cool additions. Now don't get me wrong, some of these were already additions in like The Sims 3 when you had like fast lane stuff, so some of it isn't completely new concept if we're being brutally honest. And if you think about it, cars were obviously a base game addition in The Sims 3, so like do with that what you will. So anyway, they're the kind of strengths that I made a note of. I mean, there are a few more that I quite liked from the prompts, but let's get into the more juicier section of the sort of negatives or concerns that I have with having a car pack. Basically, I'm gonna be honest, the first point that I made a note of is bugs and overall lag. This sort of pack is going to require quite a lot, I would imagine, from the game, because it would completely kind of overhaul the system that we currently have in place. With that being said, I think there is so much potential for there to be a lot of bugs and potentially a lot of lag. As a result, the one bug that I feel like would come up is, how is the game going to differentiate from people visiting a neighbour's house, like a rental for example, or apartment, versus like you're going to a neighbourhood or a world? I don't know how the game would do that, and I do feel that it would end up just being quite buggy. I just don't know how well cars would work within the game. And I'm happy to be wrong about it, but I just don't know. Like, if we think about how many features in the game are broken at the minute, I do worry a little bit that it would end up being one of those packs where it's basically just broken. I am talking like The Sims 4 Dine Out or The Sims 4 Wedding Stories, those sorts of things. Like, that's my worry. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. The other thing that I've kind of made a point of is, how would this work with the current travel UI system that we have within the game? Like, I just don't know how it would work, which is kind of why when I've brought up the idea of cars, I've always brought it up in conjunction with having like a transport pack as a whole, because I feel like if you add cars into the game, it kind of brings up a lot more questions about other things. Because for me, in my head, you can't travel by car from Solani to San Myshuno. You need a plane, in my opinion. This is my opinion, obviously. Do you know what I mean, though? It feels like they should be on completely different time zones, which kind of gets me into a bit of another tangent, so I'll leave it for now. I just don't know how it would work with cars. Do you know what I mean? In The Sims 2 and in The Sims 3, I completely understood it, because in The Sims 2 and The Sims 3, you were in control of just one world with obviously loads of different neighbourhoods. So it made sense to have cars that travelled between the neighbourhoods, or in The Sims 3, obviously, between the world. But in The Sims 4, yes, we have separate neighbourhoods in the worlds, but we also have a lot more worlds and we can access a lot more worlds. So I feel like a car almost doesn't work, which is why I always said that if I would rather them do a transport pack as a whole that included like airports and like airplanes and airports, or even like a metro system and like a train system, things like that, because I feel like that logically makes more sense than a car, if you know what I mean. So I just don't know how actually effective a car would be. I did also put the question of how well would this pack work with other packs. I'm thinking about cars as being quite an interactive experience. I'm hoping they don't just rabbit hole it, because that's what The Sims 4, when it was first released and when they first said about not having an open world, they said it was because they didn't want to do rabbit holes. And even though they've kind of gone back on their word a little bit with the latest few packs, I really hope they would make the car situation quite playable and not just a rabbit hole. But I just don't know how the cars then integrate with other packs. It's like, I just don't understand how it would work with like Solani, for example, where if I'm trying to remember Solani on the top of my head, but I think they're like beach islands, which obviously it makes sense to almost travel by boat. Like, you wouldn't travel by car to get to those neighborhoods. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there'd be so many like problems with it. I don't know, like if they did this pack, there would have to be so much thought and so much detail that goes into it, because I feel like there's like 100 problems that could arise for adding cars, which sounds really pedantic and really silly, but I feel like there is. Like I feel like there's just so many kind of things that, because of the way that the game's set up, it's kind of not set up for cars, and I feel like they would be better off doing like an airport sort of system or a metro sort of system versus cars. Anyway, the other thing that I did say is, how would this affect your game if you don't have this pack? Which sounds really silly, but my guess is that if we have cars, they are going to have to change the travel UI system that we currently have within the game. And if that is the case, how would that then work for people that don't have the pack? Would they have to change the travel UI to a certain degree anyway in base game to make the cars work? Or like, what would they have to do? Because I'm assuming that if you would have a pack like this, it would require a lot more like care when you're updating the game and like adding things into the game versus if somebody doesn't have this pack. I don't know if that makes sense, if my point does make sense, but I just feel like you can't have the current UI system that we have in the game and then have a new UI system for those that have cars. I don't know if it would work. Like I said, I'm also happy to be proven wrong. I just don't see how it would work. I just feel like it would end up causing bugs or lag at some point. And the thing is, the only thing I did think about is that this isn't like a completely like new thing. Like if I think about life and death, for example, I personally don't have that pack yet. And you know, the way that people die in The Sims, I know that they did change a little bit of how the phone works when one of your Sims dies, and that was without even life and death. So I don't know whether they would have to do something like that in order to almost make it work. But yeah, I would just be curious how it works for those people that don't have the pack. The other question I've raised is, what sort of world would they do? Because there isn't really a natural world for like cars. And I guess my big concern, actually, the way that the worlds are built currently in The Sims 4, they don't really have roads. Like if you think about it, like they don't really have roads. So how would it work to make sure that your Sims aren't driving on pavement? And I don't know if the neighborhoods, particularly if we're thinking about like the earlier worlds and even like Willow Creek, Oasis Springs, they're not particularly big worlds. So like actually, how would it work with driving about? Like would you be able to drive about, or would it just be like The Sims 2? But then it can't be. If you're teaching your kids how to drive, but then actually it didn't say teaching your teens how to drive, it said a driving school, which I guess could be a rabbit hole, which then goes back into my whole thing about like this sort of pack feels like it should be very much open world and interactive. I don't know how good a rabbit hole would be, but anyway, but yeah, that's my big thing. Like I don't think they would be able to do it. The Sims 3, when you taught your teens to drive, you had the whole world to like just kind of circle around, but you don't have that in The Sims 4. Like I don't know how it would work other than a rabbit hole, which I do think is a bit pointless, unless there was like an actual driving school, I suppose, that you could go to that was like a track. But then I don't feel like that's many like people's accurate way of learning how to drive, or at least in the UK it isn't. So I don't know, I just think it would be really hard to add cars into like the way that our current world system is set up. It would be interesting to see how they go about it and how they do it. I just don't really know. Kind of the last point, I feel like it's a good point. The last point I've noted anyway, that doesn't stop me from rambling, is what is the point of cars? Like realistically, what is the point? I don't know if I think I would rather them kind of add in a new concept. I think I would like them to add in like bands, or you see, I always thought that if they did something like adding bands and music, they could add in the addition of like a world tour sort of thing. And if they did that, you could then incorporate maybe like an airport sort of system in, so you could have almost 2 in 1. Now, that is a lot of detail than The Sims 4, so don't know whether they would do it. But yeah, I don't know whether cars by themselves is a strong enough selling point for me personally. Because as much as I like the realism of cars, it would depend on how the Sims team did it. Let's be honest, it would depend how they do it. I just think you'd have to do so much to actually make it playable. And I just don't know whether it would just be not worth the hassle. I also just don't, like I said, I just don't know if there is much point to them. Like, I would much rather them have a general pack of, like I said, like transport, because you could have like loads of different career options with that, and maybe you could incorporate some of the features that they're listed here, but also combine it with the others as well, because I just feel like, as much as I really like this and it does have quite a lot of features in it, I'm just not sure how it would work with the amount of loading screens that are there. I just don't know if there's much point in it. Like, please let me know what you guys think, like realistically, because that's my thing. Like, when I first started thinking about it, I was like, why wouldn't I want cars? Like, obviously I want cars added to the game, duh. But then when I'm thinking about it more, like, I'm kind of like, actually I kind of would prefer other features that are probably a little bit more exciting, if I'm being honest, into the game, because I just feel like the way that our current system is set up is not made for it. But I also don't think by adding cars it fixes it, because like I said, like, how would you go from like Solani to San Myshuno on a car, in a car? Like, it makes no sense, in my opinion. I do think it would be cool if they, like I said, did a transport pack as a whole, and also added the addition of time zones. One of my biggest kind of things about The Sims 4, right, is that you go from San Myshuno potentially to Solani. I'm so sorry that I've used that example like 3 times, but it's like the biggest contrast that I can think of. You go from those like 2 packs, or even if you go to the like Snowy Escape world or like the outdoor retreat world, and it's like no time has passed, and it's like, that's not realistic. I would get it if you're going by neighborhoods, and even then technically it would take you like half an hour to get to a neighborhood, maybe, or maybe longer, I don't know. So like, how can you go from different worlds and the time's not changed? I don't know why, but it's one of my biggest gripes at the minute. Somebody's probably created a mod, actually. I bet somebody has created a mod out there for it, and if they haven't, they should, because it's a very good idea. Either or, I could totally get it. Like, my friend, right, I have a friend that plays The Sims. We're both Sims players, and I'm sure she would really love the concept of this pack, because she's very into like F1 and like driving and all that sort of jazz. And maybe it's because I'm not that like particularly bothered about cars, that for me I'm like, yeah, take it or leave it. This sort of pack description does excite me. There's loads of different options. I think there's also loads of different options for if you're not really into like driving, but also like there's enough to do sort of thing. But I just don't know if it's that necessary. And like I said, even some of the features that it was saying about like the drive-in theatre, or like going to look at a scenic overlook with like under the star sort of thing, in my head I've got a really lovely visual of that. I just know it's gonna be half-baked. I just know it wouldn't turn out that way, but I also just feel like I just don't know how it would work. That's my big thing with the cars. Like, in The Sims 2 and The Sims 3 I got it, like it made sense in the game, but I just don't think it makes sense in The Sims 4 with the current travel system. I would find it really weird of the concept, get into this car to then go, like I said, to Solani, or even if you went to like Willow Creek to Oasis Springs, like one's like green and one's a desert. I couldn't think of a word of green, but you know what I mean, like they're 2 different extremes. So like, how big of the road trip are we talking? Like 2 days? Like I said, I'm actually really happy to be proven wrong, and I would be really interested if they do this pack, how they go about doing it, because I just don't really understand how they can do it. The more I think about it, the more perplexed I am, because the more I'm like, I don't understand how they can incorporate cars at this point in the game without like breaking the game. This pack would have to work with like so many different other packs and so many other worlds as well. That's the other thing that I'm like, is that even worth the hassle? I do not know. I think that's me concluded. Please let me know what you guys think about this one, because I would imagine it's quite divided within the comments. Cars have been something that's been requested for a really long time, so I would imagine lots of people would want this pack. And don't get me wrong, like out of the concepts that they listed, this was one of my favorites, like, so I totally get it. I just, like I said, I just don't know actually how it would work. That's what I'm skeptical about. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you want me to do a video on any of the other concepts that they did, because the other one that I thought was really interesting, but I don't know whether it feels like it should have been part of another pack, is the ocean life exploration one, which I was tempted to do a video about, so I might do that next. But yeah, let me know if there's any others that you want me to have a little talk about. And I'll be completely down for that. Anyway, if you guys have enjoyed today's video, then please be sure to leave a like. Go subscribe if you haven't already. Go leave a lovely comment. I'm always up for a debate in the comments, and I always love actually reading people's points and perspectives, because sometimes you read it and you're like, I didn't think about it like that, and I loved it. I love when you feel like that. Anyway, so yeah, go leave your comments and I will try my best to reply to them. Like I said, if you have any subjects or comments that you'd like me to talk about, also leave them in the comments as well. Anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, night, wherever you are, and I'll see you all next time. Bye everyone.